Hey everyone, John here, and we have hours and hours of raw 4K Switch 2 gameplay from Nintendo Treehouse. And rather than waiting until launch to directly compare these things, I thought, why not do it right now? We can take these clips, compare them to the Switch 1 counterparts, and see just how much differs. So let's start off with load times. And the Treehouse kinda did this first one for us. This is Breath of the Wild. I'm just going to add in a timer countdown so you can see exactly how long it really takes. And as you can see right here, the Switch 2 version loads in 3.04 seconds, whereas the Switch 1 version loads in 9.03 seconds. Although, I'm measuring from where the animation stops, this may actually load faster than it seems to, because the load bar just zooms off around 2.07 seconds in, so technically this might take just 2 seconds to load. Now, our next comparison was in the Direct itself, but Nintendo cut off the comparison early, so you don't really see how long Yoshi's Crafted World actually takes to load on Switch 1 versus Switch 2. And the answer is 4.22 seconds on Switch 2 and 8.04 seconds on Switch 1. And this one's really interesting because there's no Crafted World patch that we know of, so this might be a raw, backwards compatible, unpatched game, and we're seeing here there are improvements to performance. Kirby and the Forgotten Land doesn't really change. This game already loaded very fast. It's 2.03 seconds on the Switch 2 and 2.11 seconds for Switch 1. And that's just for loading a level. When going into a mid-level transition, it's 1.24 seconds for Switch 2 and 2.05 seconds for Switch 1. And again, a lot of this may be tied to the animation. It's hard to say exactly how fast the Switch 2 is really loading this, but it just blasts straight through it. And the same is true for Mario Party Jamboree. 1.16 seconds for loading a minigame on Switch 2, 1.25 seconds for loading a minigame on Switch 1. And while Mario Kart World doesn't have a direct Switch 1 counterpart, it loads in 4.24 seconds, whereas Mario Kart 8 Deluxe takes 8.24 seconds. But we're not quite done with load times, because Tears of the Kingdom has quite a large upgrade. And this is going to seem really small if you haven't played the game, but whenever you fuse something to your bow in Tears of the Kingdom, there's a 0.09 second stutter. That sounds tiny, but you feel it every time you try and equip something. And in the Switch 2 version, it's gone. I just watch these clips over and over again. I'll keep looping them. And just watch one side, and then watch the other side. Watch one side, watch the other side. You can feel and see the difference quite drastically. But when it comes to the visuals themselves, Super Mario Party Jamboree might be the most drastically different looking game. This is likely just down to their HDR capture, but the visuals are so much more vibrant with much stronger darks, and it's just a night and day difference compared to the Switch version. This is running at 1440p at 60 FPS. Now with Kirby and the Forgotten Land, they only showed the new remix level stuff, so nothing directly comparable to the Switch game. However, there is something major in Forgotten Land. First off, we're going 1440p 60 FPS, which is double the frame rate. But if you've played Forgotten Land on Switch, you will know it's quite an aggressive frame rate. It was 30 FPS there, but if enemies were a few meters away from Kirby, they would go to half rate, and just look how soon this kicks in. However, on Switch 2, this doesn't appear to be the case. Look at this enemy way off over there. Okay, way off in the distance, so far from Kirby, and they appear to be operating at full 60 FPS. So it's not just double the frame rate, this is a big change to how Forgotten Land even operates. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom also run at 1440p 60 FPS, and the huge difference is in fidelity. They show off the Korok Forest, the biggest stress point of Breath of the Wild, and Switch 2 is just powering through it, whereas Switch 1 is having a bit of a harder time. And while these two aren't really comparable, Donkey Kong Bonanza is clearly built off Odyssey, and the photo mode is the exact same, so let's compare that. So, those are the main technical advancements that I spotted, and I'm going to stop yapping and leave you with a bunch of comparisons, starting with Metroid Prime 4, which is compared to last year's Switch 1 trailer. That is likely an old build now, that Switch 1 version is most likely better than it was back then, but still we can directly compare the two. Everything else is going to be Treehouse versus Switch 1. Have fun, everyone!
Finish! Really?